Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective, back here in Austin, back here in the lab. Let's get it. Thank you guys for all the support. Throughout the last few months, it's been very trying, but here again. And before I get started, I just want to take a moment to first off promote our appearance. Trey and I went on the Fire Steve Sarkeesian podcast presented by the Horns Cast Network, where we gave a nice preview to all of spring practice. We will be having a live chat discussion tonight that I will be posting. So everybody that wants to come on and talk about Texas football and talk with us live, we're actually going to do a Friday night live. I'm really excited about it. Tran's going to be on. We're going to have a blast. And for everybody that's like, oh, the Fire Steve Sarkeesian podcast, look up what the word satire means and keep it moving. And go support those guys. They're phenomenal. Josh and Noah, thank you for having us on. It was our first opportunity to even be in the podcast world. So that was dope. Next part, make sure you like, share, and subscribe the video. We are trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. I'd love it if you guys continue to support the movement. I don't ask for much, but just that support and hitting that like button and following along our journey by subscribing. Now, the reason why we're here today is Shaka Smart and the news that has broken that he is, at the time I'm recording this, he is getting ready to, I guess, accept a contract with Marquette, or, if it's already been agreed to, but he's basically going to be the new head basketball coach at Marquette University, following his 6 seasons here in Austin at the University of Texas. And I want to wrap first. I'll break this video into 2 parts. First part is going to be just Shaka, why things didn't work out to our expectations here the way we thought. And then where does Chris Del Conte, part 2, where does Chris Del Conte go moving forward in terms of the next head coach of Texas men's basketball? Now, I will say this. Shaka Smart being hired by Steve Patterson, so essentially 2 ADs ago, before getting to Chris Del Conte. And one of the things here in Texas, and I think this goes across most sports, honestly, just in terms of the overall culture here at Texas. And you can say a lot of things, whether it's, toxicity and noise from the boosters, all, distractions with the song, all that type of stuff. We've talked about all those things here on this channel. But I think one thing that you can really buy yourself some credit here at Texas is if you're successful early, if you get something of substance early. Big Schaefer, who came over from Mississippi State and took over the women's basketball team, they're in the Sweet 16 in year 1. And, that's not even counting the recruiting class he has coming in, some of the transfers he's going to have coming in. Year 1, he's able to hit the ground running. The baseball coach, Coach Pierce, able to hit the ground running right off the bat and have some early success. I think Shaka had moments, but he never had one, because again, I just mentioned with the women's tournament, Sweet 16, that's where the success comes in, because we're looking at the postseason tournament. And Shaka, 6 years in, 0 NCAA tournament wins. 0. And I'm not a Shaka hater. I don't think I'm necessarily a Shaka apologist, especially considering I made the Fire Shaka Smart video last season. But I genuinely like Shaka Smart, and I do think he's a good basketball coach. I don't think you can be a bad basketball coach and beat Bill Self twice in the same season. I don't think you can be a bad basketball coach and have a team and get your team consistently ranked, in the top 15 teams throughout an entire season. I don't think bad basketball coaches do that. And that's, after some time. It's not like he inherited any of these players. These are all his players, for better or for worse. But the fit matters. And I never thought the fit really just came together for Texas, because when Shaka came over from VCU, we thought it was going to be the havoc, full court pressure, in your face type of defense that was creating a lot of turnovers, was getting people out running, getting people out in transition like we saw at VCU. And the reality is, as Shaka got here and you have access here at Texas to NBA level talent, and trying to showcase different guys, a lot of them being big men, and trying to make things fit with the guards he had or didn't have. It created this product that wasn't great to watch offensively, and we never saw that same type of intensity and pressure on a consistent basis on the defensive end. Offense came around much better this season, I think, in conjunction with the experience of the guards, Matt Coleman, Andrew Jones being healthier, and Courtney Ramey for most part of the season until he had his collapse, Big 12 tournament onward. But even with all of that said, and everything seemingly trying to come together, them overcoming COVID, the Abilene Christian loss takes away almost everything, including your Big 12 tournament championship. Because I thought Texas had been snake bitten in the tournament, to be honest with you. Whether it was, the Nevada game or the Northern Iowa loss, like those were tough circumstances. And I said, because I think Nevada was like an 8-9 matchup. I think we got caught up in like some 8-9 matchups. So those are 50-50 toss-up games. And the outcome turned out to be that way. You lose one game in overtime, you lose one game on a half-court buzzer beater. I never was the one tripping off those losses. But you had 11-win season in there. You had the NIT season, which people would look back more fondly if you had been a better basketball team the following year. Now, I know we didn't have a tournament because of COVID in 2019, going to 2020, but even that team was fringe. We were talking about a bubble team at that point, depending on what they would have done in Kansas in the Big 12 tournament. So you have those two tournament appearances, essentially. You have the third one this year. And I'd always said, get that higher seed to where you're not matched up with a really good team like Nevada who had NBA players, or a Northern Iowa team who's traditionally been very, very feisty and very good in the NCAA tournament. And they did get the higher seed. They got a 3 seed. You go against Abilene Christian, who's not very good offensively at all. And we saw this play out in the UCLA game in their second round where they got obliterated like they should have. And that's no disrespect to Abilene Christian at all. Feisty guys, played hard. But all of the problems that people had and that people were critical of Shaka Smart with came to a head in that particular game. And I think that was just a collective part where we knew it was over. It was over. Again, I like Shaka. This isn't me trying to, I think people go overboard in bashing a lot of those things. But at the end of the day, you're looking at, what are you doing come NCAA tournament time? What are you doing in March? And Texas didn't have enough. It's not like he was winning the Big 12 every single year and then they were dropping the ball at the end of the season. I think that's even a different conversation. But it's always been inconsistent. So for all of the big moments, for all the upset wins over North Carolina, the Kansas wins, beating Oklahoma State when they were good, and all these different games that you've won, you also have duds, and the ultimate dud in Abilene Christian that was just the unforgivable, unexcusable loss. Now, we go through all that. Kai Jones is declared for the league. Donovan Williams is in the transfer portal, and the roster we have no idea, what the roster is going to look like 2021-2022 season. And that's essentially the end of the era for Shaka Smart. And it's it's frustrating from a standpoint of wanting to see a Black coach succeed in this landscape, wanting to see somebody who's genuinely a good person and overcoming the Steve Patterson regime and some of the instability of Texas, sometimes the lack of attention from this fan base in terms of the basketball culture. But ultimately, leadership starts from your head coach. A lot of that accountability falls at the feet of Shaka Smart. I wish him the best at Marquette. I think he's in a better basketball culture and situation for him going to the Big East. Shaka actually grew up in Wisconsin, and more so Madison, Wisconsin, but born in Milwaukee. he's Midwestern, but you're competing on the Big East. You're recruiting a lot of East Coast kids. There's a lot of East Coast kids from like Maryland and Virginia on the Marquette roster. They've had more recent success in the NCAA tournament than Texas has had over the last decade plus. So he's going to go to a great situation there at Marquette to try to rebuild that program. And I think it's just a better fit for him. So sometimes situationally it's a fit. I know he's a good basketball coach, and I don't think we've heard the last from Shaka Smart. But as for Texas, Chris Del Conte has a big decision on his hands. You're moving to a new arena. You're trying to uplift this basketball culture the way you're getting this momentum from the women's side because you got the right person and Vic Schaefer, and he's turning things around quickly. And, Del Conte's done a good job so far with his hires. Steve Sarkisian, outstanding because he has not officially coached a game here yet at Texas. So his grade will come. But from the other hires that have essentially started here under Chris Del Conte, it's been very positive. So where does he go from here? I think I'll break it down this way. There's one name that a lot of people in the fan base want, and depending on what inside reports, might already be the leading candidate, and is the name we've been talking about for a while. And then there's a shoot for the moon candidate, and then I have about 4 or 5 names that I would like to pursue. So I'll start with Chris Beard. Let's just get that. Let's start with the elephant in the room. Chris Beard, Texas Tech. Now, a lot of people are high on Chris Beard. I think for, obviously his run in the Final Four just a couple years ago with Tech, Elite Eight appearance, I believe, the year before. So he's had not just one run like Shaka did at VCU, but he's had a couple runs at Texas Tech, respected in the coaching profession, and is a Texas grad. I think that's low-hanging fruit for a lot of fans. People look at the Texas thing and believe he was mentored under Tom Penders and how he's, the success he's had in Lubbock. But a few things here. Chris Beard is already the 3rd highest paid basketball coach, and I believe in all of college basketball. So actually makes more money than Shaka Smart did. I believe Chris Beard was at $4.5 million a year. Shaka was around 3.3. And Shaka Smart this past season was 12-6 in the Big 12. Chris Beard, I believe their team was 9-8. And Texas Tech over the last two years, because I think if you're Chris Del Conte and you're evaluating this, you've got to look at what have you done for me lately. Tech is 1 game over 500 in the Big 12 in the last 2 years. And I know they had a run to the national championship game before that. A lot of coaches, a lot of these candidates that I will bring up have had runs or similar runs to what Chris Beard did. I think the other thing too is if I'm Bill Self or Scott Drew and Texas makes the move to get Chris Beard, do I lose sleep at night over that? Because to me, Chris Beard is not a better basketball coach than either of those two. And I don't think he's relatively on their level of coaching. And the reason why I say that is because Chris Beard, fundamentally has been a defensive-minded coach like a Shaka Smart was previously. And Texas Tech has had issues with their sets, with their spacing, offensively too much ISO ball, end of game, out of timeout plays and all those things. I watch a lot of Tech ball because I'm a Texas fan and we're crossing paths all the time. I think you would have some of the same type of issues. Now, you can make the argument, hey, for sure, Chris Beard's done more with less from a recruiting standpoint at Tech than Shaka did at Texas. No doubt about it. Chris Beard's had more postseason success as of recently than Shaka Smart with less talent. No doubt about it. I think those guard things are interesting. Shaka Smart made a mistake in evaluation going, I believe it was Jacob Young over Carson Edwards. Texas ends up with Carson Edwards, who became a first-round pick to the Boston Celtics. Maybe that script is different. Maybe Shaka Smart's script is different if Isaiah Taylor stays another year. Don't know. But I do know Jared Culver developed to a really nice player who was one of their catalysts, and they just got better guard play from those guys. I say all that to say the moment that NBA level player was gone, Texas Tech has been essentially a 500 program within this conference the last couple of years. And that's with some really good transfers that have come into his program. It's not like he's devoid of talent. I think that also speaks to, and Texas fans need to realize this, the level of competition that is the Big 12. It's an unbelievable basketball conference that we play in. So, him being 500 or Shaka being, slightly below 500 for his tenure here at Texas, when you're talking about Huggy Bear being here, I mentioned Scott Drew, I mentioned Bill Self, Lon Kruger, who just recently stepped down and retired from OU. A lot of good basketball coaches in this conference. Now, would I be mad or upset if Chris Beard ends up to be our guy? I think he can get a little bit more juice and heart out of some guys. I think fundamentally, maybe getting them to play harder, maybe a little bit more pressure. Sure. Do I think Texas basketball culture is changed and, we're all of a sudden this offensively dynamic team and all that under Chris Beard? I don't see that personally. And that is why I think some of these other options might be a little bit more appealing if Chris Del Conte decides to pursue. Now, your shoot for the moon option is Billy Donovan. I don't think that's realistic at all. I was banging the table for Billy Donovan when I knew he was going to leave Oklahoma City in the NBA. But with him being, getting the contract he got from the Chicago Bulls, some of the administrative power he has there, he's not like a GM or anything, but he has a lot more say in personnel decisions and some of the things that are going on there. I think he has a lot of young talent on the Chicago Bulls. When you're looking at a guy like a Zach LaVine or a Lauri Markkanen, they just traded for Vucevic. They drafted a Patrick Williams in the top 4 pick. Kobe White is there. Like, you have a lot of good young talent. They're about a game and a half right now out of the 8th seed in the NBA. Like, to me, if I'm Billy Donovan, and everybody knows I was an elite college basketball coach, nothing left to prove there. I think Chris Del Conte, that's the same type of conversation that he had when he went to go talk to Kyle Shanahan regarding the Texas head coaching position. I think that's thanks, but no thanks. But, if you're Chris Del Conte, I think it's, make the phone call. But I don't think that the Texas basketball job is a more appealing job than being the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. And that's me saying that as a Texas fan. In terms of my realistic options, I love Eric Musselman from Arkansas. Love his energy. I love his offense. I love his spacing. All of his teams have always been offensively dynamic. Even going back early 2000s Golden State Warriors, when they were trash, couldn't play defense, but they score points. And I think from a Texas basketball culture, I think they need to shift into being a little bit more offensive minded, especially with the athletes that you are going to be able to get at Texas. Rick Barnes was able to get athletes here. Shaka Smart has been able to get athletes here. I don't think that will change, especially when you look at some of the guys, the higher end talent guys that are available. The Jalen Greens, the Greg Browns, the people that have come out of just the state of Texas alone, those people are always going to be around. But if you have somebody that has a beautiful offensive system, who has gone to Arkansas and really turned things around, the most successful coach they've had since Nolan Richardson, I think Eric Musselman, you just saw him beat Texas Tech. And to me, I did see a coaching gap between Eric Musselman and Chris Beard. And there was a lot of similarities in terms of, some of the pressure tactics and things of how they played that game. But what I liked with Eric Musselman's team is they can play more than one type of style and game one way and win. And we'll see how far they go in the tournament. I'm sure he's going to get a nice little raise from Arkansas, but that's somebody who you can go and pursue and poach. The other one is going to become a hot name out there in the Midwest. If you're thinking about like IU basketball or somebody that's ready to make that leap for the big time, Porter Moser from Loyola Chicago. So Sister Jean's school over there. And now with the Ramblers, this is now more than once, right? I think everybody, when they went to the Final Four a few years ago, people were like, okay, that's cool. Cute story. Unbelievable. Like a George Mason. And even Jim Larinaga, it ended up, parlaying that into, going to Miami and stuff like that. But with Porter Moser, still a younger coach, if you will, early 50s. I think now doing this twice. And if you watch Loyola play, for those of you guys who've been watching the tournament, really, really dialed in, when I watch them play, they look like a Power 5 team. They don't look or play like there's no gimmicks. I don't see anything where they're like, just crazy hot from the field and making every shot. I think they play really sound defense. I think they have a lot of people that play high IQ basketball, spacing's on point, and defensively, they're outstanding in how they contest, how they communicate. And that's a result of a good basketball coach. And I think that somebody like that's done what he's done, considering the resources of Loyola Chicago, I think that would be more than welcome in Austin, Texas. So Porter Moser, to me, would be a phenomenal candidate. Another guy, Kelvin Sampson, Houston. Now, I know some people are going to say, he used to be the OU coach for a minute before he went to IU, and, there's some history there. I get it. Everywhere Kelvin Sampson's been, he's won. And winning matters. I think I've seen him coach a team full of a bunch of athletes, like what he has at Houston right now. I've seen him coach, guard-laden teams that are more again, being able to play different types of styles, coach different types of varieties, having a little bit of that time with the Spurs and the Rockets and the NBA where, again, adapting more of a modern type of NBA approach. I think Kelvin Sampson is somebody who I would be interested in. So these are just my candidates. I don't have any inside information. I think a lot of these people want Chris Beard, and that's the route that they'll try to go first. I'm just saying Musselman, Porter Moser, Kelvin Sampson, he's done a terrific job at Houston. These are the people that I think Texas needs to be talking to if I'm leading the search. Now, I know people will say, well, Steve, if you're bringing up Kelvin Sampson, then why should we pursue Rick Pitino? Guys, there's levels to the violations. And I think Kelvin Sampson's far enough removed from the Indiana stuff with Eric Gordon and all that. Like, that's been now like 12, 13 years. Rick Pitino's stuff at Louisville is still fresh, and that was heavy violations. That wasn't just, run-of-the-mill cheating. That was you're setting your program back for disaster type stuff. And I don't think Texas can assume that risk. I know some of you guys are like, crime pays, Steve. Let's go get Rick. And yeah, Rick would win here, no doubt about it. Rick's up there with like Roy Williams and Coach K and Calipari, like that level of coach. But man, like that'd be even way more sketchy than like Urban Meyer, to be honest with you. The Rick Pitino thing, like let him stay at Iona. Let's have a little bit more time before people start having the Rick Pitino conversation. Personally, for me, I think Kelvin Sampson's coached a lot more basketball over a sustained period of time and shown he can keep, clean and move forward. But I know for a lot of people, the OU ties would be a turnoff. Now, speaking of OU, them now having an opening, I think Dana Altman from Oregon is probably going to be the guy they hone in on. And if Texas wants to jump into that sweepstakes, why not? Very decorated coach. He's in the Sweet 16 right now. He's probably been one of the most consistent, underrated coaches in all of college basketball. And, even with recruiting it from an NBA standpoint, like they've actually done a much better job over there at Oregon than people realize. I think one of the issues with Dana Altman is the competition for his services. Like if I'm Arizona and you're getting ready to move on from Sean Miller, I want to talk to Dana Altman. I'm sure Oklahoma's going to want to talk to Dana Altman. I'm sure, maybe Indiana. I think Indiana's probably going to be more in the mix for Chris Beard or Porter Moser potentially. But with the openings that are out there, I think Dana Altman's going to be somebody who's in high demand. Now, the two wild cards, and I'll finish here. I know it's a longer video, but there's a lot on my mind to touch on basketball related. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. But two wild cards. Now, shout out to Inside Texas. They have brought up Royal Ivy, and I'll get to Royal Ivy in a second. But the one other coach out there who, for whatever reason, I don't hear enough about his name. I've heard him tied a little bit to IU, but that's it. Is John Beilein, who's sitting over there at the Big Ten Network just doing commentary for games. I don't understand why he's not coaching right now. Maybe he wanted to take a break after the Cleveland Cavaliers fiasco. And I knew that his style and his demeanor, he was not going to work in the NBA, but hey, go try your hand in it. And that's the difference between him and somebody who's more modern and up with things like a Billy Donovan. But John Beilein, amazing teacher. You know, you're going to have A1 floor spacing, A1 offensive, productivity, A1 plays coming out of timeouts, all of that stuff. And at a fundamental level, can do more with less, can teach, amazing teacher. You'll see that in-season development that I think has been an issue for many of us here with Shaka Smart's guys. So I'm curious as to why no one's really turning over the John Beilein leaf, or if that's even a realistic candidate, or if he's just done with coaching basketball. Curious to see. Now, Royal Ivey is, again, Inside Texas, and I think a couple other people on some platforms have brought his name up, assistant coach, Brooklyn Nets. I think that one's interesting because you're talking about a former Texas player who was right there with my man TJ Ford, James Thomas, Brad Buckman, that whole crew. Underrated NBA career, hung around for 10 years, and is been starting to become a highly regarded name in coaching circles, working with a Steve Nash, working with a Mike D'Antoni. I like the pedigree there. And he comes with the access to all of the NBA players. So now you talk about having that fraternity-like environment like a Kentucky does, and that John Calipari's been able to successfully create. I know they were down this year, but overall, they have a thing, a real culture that I think helps recruit players because their NBA players are so tied into their program. You would get that with Royal Ivey. And I think that's almost as if Texas basketball decided to take more of a startup approach or outlook on what they're trying to do. I think that's very, very intriguing. The only hesitancy I have with Royal Ivey is you're going to have a very experienced staff because he hasn't been a head coach before. I'm also concerned because he's kind of being groomed to be an NBA head coach. And we know the college game is different, especially when you start talking about recruiting and connecting with high school kids, things of that sort. But that's the intrigue of what all of those NBA guys coming in together can bring. And maybe one of these other candidates that I mentioned tap into that as well. But we know with Royal Ivey being a former NBA guy himself, one of KD's best friends and now one of his coaches, that would be an unbelievable prospect for Texas if they decide to go that route. But just to recap, I'm not super high on Chris Beard, but sounds like he's the front runner. Billy Donovan's like your way out there, Kyle Shanahan type hire. And then my list of people I'm talking to, Eric Musselman from Arkansas, Porter Moser from Loyola Chicago, Kelvin Sampson, Houston, and if you want to get in the Dana Altman sweepstakes from Oregon, if you can get him to leave Oregon. So y'all let me know in the comments, just wrapping up the Shaka Smart piece, as well as where does Texas basketball go moving forward into the Moody Center. Chris Del Conte, where are you guys going to take us? I'm excited. Come back tonight for the live. We're going to cover a lot of stuff. It's been fun. Make sure you hit that like button. I appreciate you guys. Remember, horns always up.